I like to investigate diseases and illness and try to help people.
I was just interested in going and making a difference. Little did we know what we were going to meet over the next 6 months.
I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Something's happening that shouldn't be happening.
Get out! I felt as if it could kill me.
Hospital ergonomics advisor Sandrea Mosses controls every detail of operation in her busy urban hospital.
Okay. Good start to the day.
My job title was the moving and handling advisor. To save lives, you need to be able to move people. People unconscious, people that are disabled, people with limited mobility, how we would facilitate taking them into theatre, operating them and what equipment we would need. The whole journey through the hospital, right the way down to the mortuary. I was just interested in going and making a difference. My career has always mattered to me.
Where Sandrea and her team work is just one part of a massive hospital complex.
13 theatres, 40-odd wards. It was one of the biggest teaching trusts in the country.
Sandrea and her staff have recently moved into new offices.
Otherwise, settling in all right?
Yes, definitely.
Good. How's the space here?
Although located in an older, isolated building, they couldn't be happier.
Is good, good, great.
Yes.
We've been in really cramped circumstances, trying to fit in offices where we didn't fit. Now we've got these lovely rooms, lovely little offices. So absolute bliss. We couldn't believe our luck. Little did we know what we were going to find, what we were going to meet in those offices over the next 6 months.
During the day, the offices are everything Sandrea could ask for. But at night, when Sandrea stays late, her surroundings take on a much less welcoming tone.
There was one evening when I was getting ready of a long drive home. It's at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. And I'd gone down to the ladies' room. And I was in there and I was thinking of the terrible traffic that I was going to face. Straight away I hear creaking sound. That can, when you're on your own, can be really quite scary.
Sandrea notices a sudden shift in temperature.
I could feel this cold breeze. He said, I swear to goodness, it's almost as if they were breathing on me.
So the cold spot or the cold draft is very common. Paranormal investigators run into this all the time. And it's been theorized by some that spirit entities actually use the energy of our environment. They leach the warmth out of the air, convert it into some other form of energy, and use that to manifest paranormal phenomena.
Hello, who's there?
I get the sensation of somebody standing there. I literally reel back just for that moment in absolute fear. It takes me a second or two to get myself together, and I come out of it. I'm a little bit unsure now. It's really unnerved me. I stop, sense around the room. Nothing is there at all. And I thought I'd imagined it. I thought it was my imagination. This thing instantly appeared alongside me. I could physically see something there in the room with me. It's dark, it's menacing. I was absolutely bloody terrified. Just disappears. Like dust. Nothing's there at all.
The first rational response anybody would have would be to write this off as being psychological. When I feel the presence of somebody else in there with me, is my mind playing tricks? At this point, no rational explanation is going to work for her.
Just experienced this almost evil encounter that has really unnerved me. It's really frightened me.
2 nights later, the incident continues to disturb Sandrea.
When you're in that building, you won't see anybody. You're totally isolated on your own. Expected to find one of the team had come back. Nothing, nobody there.
Sandrea experiences another sudden drop in temperature.
This wasn't just cold air, this was freezing, ice-cold air. Even putting on a jacket didn't warm her up, and she felt goosebumps break out all over her body.
This presence, this sense, this foreboding feeling is beginning to grow stronger.
The sensation of being watched intensifies. For good reason.
I saw a grey figure moving across the corridor. It really quite spooked me. The room is charged. You can sense it.
We start to see an increase in paranormal phenomena, such as light phenomena, things falling. It may be that these are the spirit entities just trying to warn the living residents that this isn't the place they should be.
This black, dark figure is standing, leaning over me, watching me. I can't describe the fear that I felt. It's over me, and I'm trapped. I can't get out.
Sandrea Mosses is terrorized by a paranormal entity at work.
And I'm trapped. It's blocking my doorway. There's no way out for me. It's overpowering me. A sense that you shouldn't be here. A sense that it was time for you to get out. I felt absolute raw fear. You just wanted to bolt and get out that building as quick as you conceivably could. It felt so powerful, as if it could kill me.
The entity achieved exactly what it asked for. It got rid of her, and it got rid of her fast.
It was almost as if this thing, this entity had intelligence. This sensation, this feeling was beginning to get stronger.
With paranormal events escalating, Sandrea is compelled to ask her colleagues if they've had similar experiences. What she discovers disturbs her.
This hospital had quite the reputation for being haunted, and there were accounts of paranormal phenomena taking place all over the complex.
One story in particular resonates with her. It occurred in the 1980s, when the hospital was undergoing massive redevelopment.
There was one story where it actually went in to check before the wrecking ball hit. That was one of the things that set it off.
Workers are sent into the building to make sure all is clear for demolition.
Inspectors will be very methodical, just making sure there's not a living person there.
They were going round. They would hear doors slamming, people running down corridors.
Is anyone there?
They get their friends playing tricks on them, people having a laugh. You'll come up with the most ridiculous things to try to justify why you've heard something that you don't understand.
The inspector is drawn deeper and deeper into the building. Suddenly, the ordinary sounds take on a terrifying tone, but their source remains a mystery.
He spins around, he's hunting high and low, and begins to wonder, is he losing his mind? Because he hears the voices very clearly. It's as if there is a crowd of people in the room with him, but he can see nobody. The room is completely and utterly empty.
Started to build up the momentum. Doors shutting, doors slamming.
Help me! Stay here! Help me! Help me! Stop! Stay here! Help me!
The one guy got trapped in, he couldn't open the door. But the reality of being locked in a room and not being able to get out, that was the thing that triggered them. That was the big thing that just almost pushed over the edge.
Don't go! Help me! Help me!
Hey! Hey!
Help me!
He told his fellow construction workers and inspectors what had happened to him inside there.
Let's get out of here.
They down tools and refuse to work again for several days until they can go find a Catholic priest.
An ordained minister is brought in to address the paranormal disturbance.
Behold the cross of the Lord.
An exorcism is a ceremony or ritual in which an ordained priest will expel spirit entities from a specific location or person. Whatever entity is being dealt with, it's certainly a dark one, and that means there's going to be a struggle for power between the priest and this entity.
Get out!
The priest, he blessed that area there. He's asking the spirits to be at peace. He's asking permission from them to leave the Irish workers alone to be able to get on with their work.
The spirit is vanquished.
The priest's intervention clearly worked, because after that, the work crews had no more complaints and no more voices were heard calling out for help.
What was your reaction to hearing this?
Wished I'd have known that knowledge beforehand, because I don't think I would have moved in that building had I known what I was going into. I would have liked to have gone in with my eyes open and knowing what I was going against.
As the days pass, the entity grows stronger.
There was always a sense of foreboding in the building. There was noises, a sense you were being watched. It was not a nice place to be in. You could begin now to sense it, waiting for you outside doors. It was getting stronger, it was getting bolder.
Ah, yes, security. Could you do something about the alarm? Thank you. God.
Confirmation of further paranormal activity at the hospital does little to put Sandrea at ease.
They told me how, watching the surveillance cameras, that they'd picked up a grey figure floating through.
The alarm is being tripped in the vicinity of the women's washroom, where Sandrea first encountered the dark presence.
If the alarm's activated, 2 guards would go down together. It's a place that nobody would go down after dark.
Everybody was aware of the history of this building and knew that it was a former workhouse. That's not a pleasant history. It's a fairly dark and troublesome one. So the spirits that haunt this place probably aren't very happy.
And in Sandrea's office complex, the entity's displeasure continues to make itself known.
So over the next few months, this entity is beginning to grow stronger because it's feeding off people's fear. People are terrified of going down that corridor. I am. My staff are. The receptionist said, "Sandra, I need to speak to you about this dark corridor. Are you having any problems with it?" She said, "Because it's getting worse."
On this night, the receptionist is the last to leave.
And as she walked down the corridor, she had this sense that something was behind her. She was getting more and more frightened. It was getting bigger and bigger.
Hospital advisor Sandrea Mosses and her staff are stalked by a terrifying entity in their workplace.
Feeling touching her, pushing her down the corridor. She says, "It's horrendous. I'm absolutely terrified. I dread it when you're not here, the sense of that corridor on my own. I don't know who to talk to. It's really frightening me." I felt obliged to be able to create a safe working environment when people weren't in fear. This had to be dealt with. It was getting stronger, and I wasn't sure where this was going to end up because this was something very powerful and it needed dealing with. So as a manager, I felt obliged to do this.
In trying to keep her staff safe, Sandrea knows she must confront the entity. She enlists the help of a colleague familiar with paranormal activity.
I'm quite afraid. I'm quite scared. I'm afraid what it's going to try and do to us. I'm afraid what it's going to do to me. But we're still going in.
Truth is that this could be a dangerous undertaking. Consequences could be terrible. The job doesn't get done if it's not defeated. They might succeed in making it stronger.
Right.
All that energy you created will now go to these entities, and they will be twice as powerful as when they started before, and they will wreak havoc on the area that they're in.
Don't turn it off. Turn it off.
I could sense something's there. This black, foreboding figure in the corridor. It begins to take on a form. It begins to take on this massive black form. And it blasts. "Get out!" And it almost knocks me back off my feet.
This entity was very clearly putting out some negative energy towards her. Sandrea got the distinct feeling that he did not want her and her friends in that place. He wanted them gone.
It is so angry, it is so racked with venom, it's trying to frighten us. It is not for the faint-hearted. If you go to try to clear a ghost, you have got to have the power to do so, because if you don't, you will unleash a monster.
Repeatedly stalked by an evil presence, Sandrea Mosses has had enough.
Now I've got to centre myself. I've got to zone myself. And as I step forward, the confident Sandrea is going into battle. hands begin to form.
The shadowy figure morphs into a human shape.
There are multiple types of ghost spirits, call them what you will. Some of them are aware that they have passed from the human body. Ones that don't know they're dead seem to be caught in some kind of loop. When someone or something intrudes on that environment that seems out of place to them, it can spark an angry reaction.
I start to communicate with it. I say to this energy, what is your business here? Why are you here? Who are you?
Why are you here?
Straight away I hear, get out!
Get out! Do not belong
He doesn't want to speak to me directly because I'm a female. I'm below him. And I'm in an area where females were very, very much in a lower position, and that's his view. He was just motionless. He wasn't communicating anything back to me. He was just motionless. This man didn't appear to really fully understand that he was dead.
What it needed to do was to pass on to whatever comes after this life. Sandria's plan is a very simple one. Help it transition to the next life.
The entity is suddenly attracted to a brilliant burst of light.
Goes on his own free will.
A portal has opened.
This is a doorway through which spirits can pass and move on to whatever comes next.
And I invite him to leave our world and go back to where he belongs.
Look to the doorway. Look to the doorway.
There's a woman beckoning him. She says she's his mother. And I say to him, your mother is there. Turn to the doorway. Look at the doorway. Your mother is there. And he just falls through. He just, at that last moment, he just resists and just melts through into the doorway.
The trapped spirit is freed of his earthly bonds.
The love of a mother that only a mother can give, just beckoning him and just calling him, trying to reassure him, tell him it's safe, tell him it's okay to do so.
When she did some investigation later, Sandria found out that this specific part of this hospital at the time was a strictly segregated area. It was off limits to women. He wanted women out of his environment.
About a week later, the receptionist came to me and said, hey, Sandria, corridor seems okay now. She said, I'm no longer frightened. She said, but have you noticed how much better it is? And I never said a word. I never told her what we'd done.
Donald Parton is 1 week into his very first job in medicine.
I had been employed before that in machine shops and then was in the military for 8 years. And after I completed my time in Desert Storm, I came back and went back to school. As a medical technologist, we drew blood samples, tested blood and body fluids for different types of diseases, for disorders and cancers. That kind of drew me into the field, wanting to investigate diseases and illness and try to help people. The way I look at things is evidence-based. I like to look at what I can find a reason for why things happen and try and discover a root cause. I try to look at it analytically as possible. Before these events that I witnessed, I was kind of more skeptical, I'm sure, about these type of things. I thought there was a possibility, but I never expected to really experience anything like this. I was relatively comfortable at the hospital for the most part. There were a few places that I didn't like to go. I didn't like to go down to the cafeteria. Just didn't feel right down there for some reason. Being alone at night, there was no one else in my department, so there were a lot of noises, but it was noises I was used to, like the sounds the machines make. Some noises that I heard at night, they didn't match up with those things specific to the lab.
Most paranormal activity is reported at night. That doesn't mean it actually happens more frequently at night, but that's when our senses are most attuned to it. There's less ambient noise, sound travels further, and plus, the way that we're all wired, we think more about ghosts and the paranormal when it's dark.
And while I was standing there, I heard kind of a growl. Like an angry dog, and it sounded like a low growl that basically says, "Get away from me or I'm gonna bite you." When I realized that what was making this growl was there with me, it was not outside, it was in, I just had to leave. It sounded to me like it was circling. My coat had got caught on something. So I reached back and looked back to unhook it from whatever it was caught on. And there was nothing there. There was nothing behind me or for it to even been caught on. The tug on my coat was like someone trying to keep me there. Or at least just scare me enough that I would leave. And that worked because I left. I said to myself, that's it, I'm never coming back down here again.
All nurses to the nurses station.
Not being able to explain something for a person like you doesn't sit well, does it?
No, it doesn't sit well for me to not be able to understand why something happens.
The incident makes Donald uneasy, but he finds comfort in the soothing repetition of his work.
I was working in the lab one night, doing maintenance on one of the analyzers, and I heard a fluttering noise. It sounded like a piece of paper. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end.
Donald's immediate reaction is to search for a logical explanation.
I couldn't find a fan. I couldn't even find any loose paper.
A fairly common manifestation of paranormal phenomena is the movement of objects through the air. We've all seen this in Hollywood ghost movies, things that float through the air. And the truth is that this is one of the ways in which spirits try to either communicate with the living, signal their presence, and sometimes instill fear.
I went back to work and I just kind of tried to put it out of my mind, but it still bothered me for a while. I didn't quit thinking about it, and I was a little more weary after that, I guess, kind of a little more on edge. I was beginning to think that maybe there was more to this than I realized.
Section 8. Section 8.
On one particular night, I was working on a, we call it cookbook chemistry. It's basically a kit where that you have to add reagents and watch for a color change. And I was kind of leaning over a counter in the main lab. At first, I just felt uneasy, just an uneasy feeling, like that you were being watched. And I saw out of the corner of my eye a shadow. First, I thought that because the lighting was staggered in there, that it might have been two of my shadows. So I moved just a little bit, and that shadow didn't move. It just scared the hell out of me.
Lab technician Donald Parton is confronted by horrifying paranormal events he cannot understand.
I could see my shadow, but it was kind of faint, but there was a shadow directly behind my shadow that looked a little larger and a little more solid. You could see a head, you could see shoulders. I was shaking to my core.
A very common form of paranormal manifestation is the shadow figure, which seems to be a step removed from the full-bodied apparition. And it's almost as if we're seeing an incomplete sketch of a human being.
It looked to be probably between 6.5 and 7 feet tall.
You turned around, what did you see?
When I turned around, there was no one else there. When I realized that there was no one behind me, I was shook up. I was really scared. When I was trying to understand these things I couldn't explain, it definitely made me scared, but it also kind of confused me a little bit because I always looked for a rational explanation, and so at first I thought, well, you know, the shadow in particular, it was the light, or it was somebody. Well, when I ruled those two things out, it only left the fact that it was something I couldn't explain, and that just kind of hard for me to deal with.
Radiology returning to read from 92668. Radiology on 92668.
Donald hopes that focusing on work again will help to settle his nerves. But working does not change anything.
I could feel as though something was leaning on my shoulder to get a better view of what was happening in front of me where I had the sample. It was like they were leaning over me to look at what I was doing. I thought I felt like breath on my neck. It just felt like that there was a person there. And so I kind of pushed back and said, "Get off, I'm doing something," but there was no one there. It just scared the hell out of me. I knew whatever this thing was, that it wasn't of this world.
The truth is that most of us are born with 5 senses, and there is a limit to what we can perceive with those senses. The shadow figure may be a good example of how we cannot perceive spirit entities in their full natural appearance.
I was shook up. I was really scared. I had to get out of the lab for a few minutes. Probably gone for a good 20 minutes, and I didn't want to go back in there when I knew I had to.
Donald knows that the patients' lives are at stake. He must continue working.
As much as I didn't want to, I went back in, but I felt like I was looking over my shoulder the whole rest of the time I was in there. This was a very important job to me. I just had completed my training. The pay was better than any job I'd had before. It was a stable work situation, good prospects to stay there and possibly advance later on.
Despite the bizarre incidents, Donald keeps his job. Several weeks pass, and his routine returns to normal. He's even joined in the lab by a coworker who likes to have fun.
Right away. Very important, very important. Ah! Yeah!
It's good. That's good. Yeah. No, you.
Oh no, that's my gift to you.
The people that I worked with were very good people. This one guy, he was a big joker. He loved to pull practical jokes on people.
But even with a livelier environment at work, Donald continues to feel uneasy in his surroundings. But what happens to Donald 3 nights later is beyond anyone's practical joke.
Around 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd go out and start drawing blood from patients, collecting samples, and bring them back and start them testing. The goal was to have all the tests done by 7 a.m. so the doctors could come in, make rounds, and look at the patients. And as I came around the corner, I saw a guy sitting on the couch. He was sitting with his hands folded in his lap, had a white lab coat.
Hello, everything all right, sir? Are you okay, sir?
I know I saw somebody. I didn't try to rationalize it or second guess it or think maybe I'm just tired. I saw someone sitting on that couch. And when I turned back around, they were gone. There's no way they could have got out of that lab without me seeing them or hearing them. The time between where I saw him and looked back was only seconds. It made me scared, to be honest with you. It was one of those feelings where you just feel it in the pit of your stomach, like something here's not right. Something's happening that shouldn't be happening.
Donald can no longer stay quiet about what he is seeing. He decides to reach out to his coworker for answers.
One night, talking to one of my friends, I said, "Have you ever had, any of these experiences?" And he said, "Did you see the doctor?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, there supposedly is a doctor that haunts this hospital."
This hospital is haunted.
He said that he had seen him. He said that one of the nurses had seen him. Said that she was getting ready to leave one morning after working night shift. And they'd just been talking about it. And she told him she didn't believe in any of that and there wasn't any truth to it. And she hit the button on the elevator, and when the elevator doors opened, she saw the doctor. The doctor that had died was standing inside the elevator door. And
Lab technician Donald Parton is overwhelmed by the terrifying paranormal events happening to him.
And she knew that he was dead, and she just stood there until the doors on the elevator shut again. She hit the button again to open it, and there was no one there.
When lives are lost and one finds ghosts, all of the energy generated by that death and dying, this can have after effects and echoes which linger for years, if not centuries, after the original incident.
Donald is in disbelief by how closely this story matches what he has heard and seen.
Co-workers were telling me that they'd seen things too. I realized, okay, I'm not crazy. I'd seen the shadow, I'd heard the growls and the tug, and then I saw this doctor sitting on a couch there. I knew somebody was there, but then they weren't. That's when I started believing in ghosts.
Donald's coworker gives him one more surprising piece of information.
Go to the old maternity ward about 3 a.m. and just wait. Might take a little bit of time, but just be there.
And I said, what will happen? He said, just go stand and see what happens. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll go see what happens. But I decided by this point I'd seen enough stuff that I was afraid to go by myself.
All set?
Donald enlists the help of a trusted colleague who also wants to understand the paranormal events happening in the hospital.
This particular area of the hospital was the old maternity wing, which had actually closed down back in 1983.
So, take me to 2 a.m. and what are you doing?
We were standing, there was an old nurse's station right there. We were the only two in that entire area because you could see in all four directions. I said, what's that noise? Sound started out faint, but then over time it grew in intensity to the point that it was identifiable. He said, that sounds like babies. They sounded like that they were either hurt or angry. It was that kind of cry, like, I need attention, I need somebody to get me. It was a pretty urgent cry. I've got 4 kids of my own, and at that time, my 2 youngest ones were toddlers. And so, you know, hearing that cry, it kind of tears you up because you're thinking, you know, this is a baby in distress. And I think that's some of what drove my coworker too. I think he was feeling the same thing I was. That when you first hear it, your first reaction is you gotta get in there to these babies, then you realize there's no way there's gonna be babies in there. Nobody leaves babies in there at night. Then it kind of turned from, you know, that kind of anxious wanting to help more to a fear.
Hearing a baby crying under any normal circumstances can be a distressing sound. Imagine how much worse that would be, how terrifying if you're in an area where there are no living babies.
Well, I was honestly afraid. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I need to know why we're hearing this sound, and I need to know what the cause of it is.
Donald and his coworker hone in on the source of the intensifying sound.
I think personally that this was a type of residual audible phenomenon, that he was somehow replaying a type of paranormal recording that was made back in the days when this was a fully functioning maternity wing.
A sudden shift in energy stops Donald in his tracks.
At this point, I'm terrified.
Determined to find the source of the sound, Donald inches down the corridor.
Do you think there's a connection between the crying babies that you heard and this doctor?
I think they may be connected. This doctor, and he'd been a surgeon up on 3rd floor. When all this started, I never really gave thoughts much about ghosts and spirits or anything. And then as I experienced these things and things I've seen and heard since, I don't have any doubt that this hospital's haunted. I think that there's still spirits there today.